I'd like to talk about something that is very important for America in general, for where we are today in this country. And obviously, now it's very clear that this problem is in the tabletop gaming community as well. And this is a really basic philosophical issue that I think is very dangerous, and it is not talked about very much. And it has everything to do with violence and the increase of violence in our society, both by alt-right extremists and alt-left extremists. And I make no bones about it, I don't care for either of them. If you're an extremist who rationalizes violence as a method to counter some other political opinion, no matter how offensive it is, I think you're an extremist, period. And that's my right to say that. And I think most Americans who are in the middle believe that same thing. So the whole idea here is that speech can be violent. This is baloney, absolute baloney. Now, there's been some scientific studies done that talks about people under stress, it hurts them over a prolonged period of time and this kind of thing. But you know what? Hitting somebody, making somebody bleed, causing them injury or physical assault is not the same as offending somebody, being hateful to somebody, even emotionally being aggressive emotionally and with your words against somebody. They're not the same thing. They never will be. And the problem is when we go down that road and start to say that words somebody said are violent, now you're opening up the door to make it okay to use actual physical violence against somebody that you have deemed has created emotional or violence through their words. Another big problem with this is who is going to decide what words equal violence. That is something we all need to really think about. If we're going to start saying words and speech can be violent or be considered as a violent action, who's going to be the judge of that? Are we really willing to go down that road? You're a communist? You're telling me that communism is the right way? That offends me. It causes me stress. It hurts me. I can't get sleep at night. You're being violent against me, so I'm going to beat you up. Is that really what we want to do? Who is going to decide what words equal violence and who is going to decide what words don't equal violence? That's not a place we need to go. That's why we need to protect free speech in this country, and that's why we have to put an end to this idea that words can equal violence. On the alt-right, you have people shouting down actors on stage that are doing a Shakespeare play in the park for free, where Julius Caesar is played by somebody dressed as Donald Trump and he's assassinated, and they don't like that. So they start screaming Nazi and, threatening violence. That is wrong. They have a right to that free speech no matter how offensive that alt-right person thinks it is. And on the other side, you have groups like Antifa who think it's perfectly okay to use violence against people who have hateful speech that they don't agree with. They still have a right in this country to speak their mind no matter how much we disagree with it. Both sides. It doesn't matter how much you disagree with speech. No speech is ever equal to violence, because when you say it is, now it's okay to be violent against those people. And that's what we're starting to see. We're seeing riots. We're seeing people shouted down. There's no dialogue between these extreme factions of the right and left. They're not talking to each other. They don't care. They just want to cause violence and mayhem, and that they're righteous in doing it. And that's a very scary place to be. So my view is we should not accept this idea that words can be violent. Words are not violence. They never will be violence. They can be horrible. they can be damaging, they could have physical impacts on somebody over a long period of time. Absolutely. But we separate that from physical violence, and we do that for a very good reason. So don't go down that rabbit hole. Words are not violence. Something everybody needs to realize here is that because somebody stands up for the First Amendment or free speech in this country does not mean that they agree with hateful speech by anybody else. Period. They're two different things. If I support your right to say hateful things, doesn't mean I support the hateful things you say. And that's true on both ends. I don't agree with Antifa. I think they're horrible, but they have every right to express their views as long as they're not using violence. Same thing on the right. You got some alt-right racist who is trying to say that they're superior, that white people are a superior race, or whatever garbage they're spewing. Doesn't mean I agree with their point of view, but I will defend their right to speech. It's not a hard concept to understand. It's something our Supreme Court has wrestled with for decades and decades, and the law is clear, and I agree with the importance of how our First Amendment rights have been upheld over the years. So we really need to think about what kind of future we want in this country. Do we really want an Orwellian society in the future where people cannot be free to say what they think? Where people are in fear of being beaten up by an angry mob because they offended that mob, where people have fear of being thrown in jail or silenced because they have an opinion or a belief that's not popular. We don't want to go down that road, because the problem is somebody is going to be making a decision on what constitutes hateful speech and what constitutes not hateful speech. We need to make sure that all speech is free, except in the very limited cases where somebody is actually inciting violence, and that violence is sure to happen because of it, like shouting fire in a crowded movie theater, for example, where it causes a panic and people could actually get hurt, right? So they're very limited reasons for limiting free speech. Outside of those, we've got to stand up and protect it.